Good afternoon. It's my honor and privilege to welcome a special multifaceted person. He is a journalist, he's a commentator, he's an entrepreneur, he's an author, and genuinely he's multifaceted. If I can say, he's India's finest sports editor, brain. He's the finest sports journalist. The big interviews with the big sports personalities and with the elan and honesty with which he conducts them often lands him in limelight and sometimes in controversy. Let me welcome Boria Majumdar today to this BW Dialogue. And we're talking to Boria about his latest book. He's a prolific author, but the latest book is topical. It is Serendipity. We've just finished a week of record bidding for the IPL rights in India. And this is about the man who created the IPL, Lalit Modi. This is the Maverick. There couldn't have been a better person to discuss the IPL, the Maverick, and we have Boria Majumdar about his new book. So first, let us show his book on a cover of his book on the screen, and then we'll bring Boria into the conversation. Salman, if we can have the poster once again so that our viewers and our readers can see the cover of the book that Boria has written. So this is the Maverick Commissioner, the IPL Lalit Modi saga, which is written by Boria Majumdar. And I'll tell you that I had to prepare for the dialogue today, and I read it last night. I was sleepy, but once I started reading it, I couldn't put it down. I promise you, I was doing it because I had to prepare for today. But once I started reading it, I got so interested because it's written in a very lucid way. It is very real, and it has some information, tidbits, interesting anecdotes, which make for great reading. So Boria, welcome to this BW Dialogue. Congratulations on your book, The Maverick Commissioner. First of all, let me start by asking, how have been the last 27 months for you? And for almost 27 of those months, we've had COVID for 23 of those months. So how have you kept yourself professionally busy? How have you kept yourself personally busy? Please tell us how have been your last 27 months.
Thank you very much, Dr. Batra. I mean, you introduced me with a lot of adjectives, but let me just say that it's a pleasure and honor to be in conversation with Dr. Anurag Batra, because not only is he a friend of mine, someone who has always been a phone call away to discuss ideas, to discuss plans. We've done multiple, you asked me about the 27 months. We've done multiple BW dialogues, including the one, how it is shaping our world, which you had convened. So, you know, you have been a real, how do I put it, a pillar of support in the last 27 months. So thank you very, very much for that. And the last 27 months have been challenging and exciting. I think that's the way I will want to describe it. I set up my own company, Red Sports, over the last year or so. COVID actually allowed us to view the world in a very different light. So not the negativity, if I focus on the other side, it was also an opportunity to rethink, reinvent, recalibrate, and then try and, you know, open up new pastures. Digital, the fact that the IPL digital rights outbid television, I think is a byproduct of COVID. The fact that I can create a digital company and think that I can run the company during COVID sitting in Calcutta, even if I'm not doing physical events, is a byproduct of COVID. Today that you and I are doing the BW Dialogue on Zoom, maybe 27 months back, we wouldn't even conceive it. The fact that I'm trying to, you know, work around athletes from around the world on a Zoom, you know, link, sitting in my house, in my home studio, I don't think was conceivable. So COVID, while it pushed us into depression. Sport came to a standstill. I was questioning myself at the start of COVID. So is it relevant anymore? I mean, I work on sport. Is sport relevant anymore? And then all of a sudden, sport is an opiate. When did the world first come together? The world first did come together in Tokyo during the Olympics. And that was sort of the coming of the world midway into COVID. Now, a month from now, I will be in Birmingham for the first time, when we will have a multidiscipline games with crowds, with spectators, partly post-COVID, partly still in there. So it's a very interesting world that we are in. It's a challenging world, but it is also a world of opportunity.
Thank you, Boria. Again, as I said, you become an entrepreneur during this period. You have been writing books in the past, and this is a book which is very topical as you rightly said, the digital rights have trumped the TV rights. So it does signal that digital is becoming bigger than every other medium, which is what is happening on ground. But let's focus on the book. Let's focus on the Maverick Commissioner and dive deep into the book. First, why this topic? Why did this topic interest you? Why did this man interest you? Why do you think we should read this book?
Very pertinent question, and thanks for asking. Let me put it straight. I mean, I was actually first asked to write this book by Vishnuvardhan Induri, who's the producer of the film 83. So it was Vishnu's idea about 2.5 years back. He's been working on the 83 project for about 4-5 years. So this was something that he had in mind, saying, what is the next big cricket moment in India after 83? It's the IPL. That can we actually do something which documents the IPL, the formation of the IPL and Mr. Modi in good and bad, not a whitewashed biography. This is not a biography of Modi. This is not Lalit's official version. You have read the book and you know it. This is as critical as, I mean, it gives the man his due. It documents in black and white, in red and yellow, clearly what the story was. And I think the IPL story is one of the most riveting and a story of modern India. Modern India creating its first and unique global sports brand, speaking out to the world, which in 15 years has become a property that fetches 50,000 crores from media rights and 12,000 from the sale of 2 teams. So clearly, it is a story waiting to be told. And what was Modi selling? Modi was not selling a stadium to any of the owners. Modi was selling an idea. And if that idea bombed, what would happen to Modi? Clearly, in the initial period, nobody in the BCCI had any idea if this will take off or not take off. Clearly, there was a lot of apprehension. There was a lot of controversy at the start. Then we know what happened with the Kochi and Sahara teams. So IPL is a fantastic story. It is the story of a maverick who created this incredible property, couldn't sustain it himself, had to leave for whatever political reasons. I don't judge Modi. I narrate the story. I leave my readers to judge Modi. But I do think it is a very cinematic tale that waited to be written. And that is why the word you used was lucid. I've tried to keep it pacey and lucid so that you can actually read it on a flight or overnight. And if you've not been able to sleep, that sort of makes my day. Because if you've not been able to sleep means you found it interesting. That means 3 years of hard work has actually worked.
And absolutely. And I must say, I didn't know Mr. Modi like you do, but he was our impact person of the year 14 years back at the peak of IPL. And clearly, we believe that he had created something special. Now, I'll also come to the fact you called it the Maverick Commissioner. Were there other names that you considered and you didn't take up those names? And I'll come to the fact that I'm already excited to seeing the movie in theater someday. And who in your view, will be an ideal person to play Lalit Modi? But before that, what were the other names that you considered before you called the book the Maverick Commissioner?
So one name we were toying with till the very last day was Imperfect Architect, because he was the architect of the IPL, but imperfect because he couldn't sustain it. That was one name we were going with. We were going with multiple names, but the word Maverick stuck with me because he is in real terms a maverick genius, somebody who created this league, and then we know all that happened with him. So I think Maverick was right. And again, commissioner, he was the commissioner. There was, the film fraternity, Vishnu and people were suggesting Super Commissioner because that was the original title of the film, which was originally conceived in 2010 on Lalit. But I didn't want Super Commissioner because it's not super, it is actually Maverick, because there are shades of good and bad. And I want to understand and objectively understand the man, not whitewash the man. So Imperfect Architect was one, Maverick Commissioner was the other, the IPL story was another, but that I felt was a bit too bland. You had to have Lalit in a book like this because ultimately he was synonymous with the IPL, at least for the first 3-4 years. So all said and done, we zeroed in on Maverick Commissioner, the IPL Lalit Modi saga, and it's a name I quite like. I mean, there is a kind of excitement to the word Maverick, which he is, and Tom Cruise's film comes out 10 days before, and I was like, is the word Maverick the currency at the moment? That hit the screens on the 25th in the UK when I was in Oxford. Top Gun Maverick, but Lalit Modi in true sense is a Maverick.
Absolutely. And now let me focus on the fact you have 8 chapters in the book. Which is your favorite chapter and why?
It's difficult. It's difficult to say because you get engrossed. And in this one, I was sort of deep diving for 3 years. But what is really important is to get right. So, for example, why was Modi leaving India? When he was leaving India, was there a call between a BCCI top functionary and Modi? My own multiple interviews with Lalit. So there's a lot in the man. And I think there is no right and wrong. That's why I will say, if I really, and I was reading, just looking at the book because of our interview with you, and I think that chapter, there is no right and wrong, because there is no right and wrong. Was he right in the way he conducted the IPL? We don't know. But if he was wrong, maybe the product wouldn't have been created the manner that it has. So, as I said, there is no right and wrong or the absent present. Think about it. Today, you have a 50,000 crore bid. And what are you and I talking about? The first reference point has to be Modi. Look at what a property is created. When an Ishan Kishan goes for a 15 crore in an auction, somewhere, somehow, in that auction room, he's an absent present. Look at the property that this man had created. So absent present, and there is no right and wrong. These are the 2 chapters I would say.
I enjoyed both of them. And there is a chapter that talks about the fact that Modi as a personality in some way became, at least at that point, became bigger than the IPL. And today we are talking about on 18th June 2022, and your book starts with reference to 18th April 2008. Give us a sense, why is that date so important? Because it was the first match of the IPL at the Chinnaswamy Stadium. There was palatable excitement and so on and so forth. You start the book with that. Give a sense of why do you think, now if you look at it in hindsight, IPL continues to be bigger than Modi, but in some way it's his legacy. Would you agree with that IPL is also his shared legacy, if not just his own legacy?
Absolutely it is, because the biggest stakeholder is the fan. Yes, Modi created it, but it is IPL belongs to every Indian. It is the legacy of every Indian. It is the legacy of Indian cricket. And if I say that it is Modi's legacy, that is perhaps why he couldn't stay on, because it was turning into his legacy. It belongs to the Indian cricket fan. And I think in his subconscious, Lalit knows it. But you have to give it to him. Without him, there was no property. But then the property, what was he banking on? The city versus city rivalry. He was ultimately banking on the passion of the Indian cricket fan. So for me, the IPL belongs to the Indian cricket fan, not the board, not Mr. Modi, not the sponsors, not the broadcaster, but that fan on the road who will play fantasy cricket, that fan on the road who will tune into television at 7 p.m., will switch on his mobile, will watch that competition any part of the world, come what may, whatever happens, will dedicatedly support a Mumbai or a Chennai or a Kolkata. That fan makes the IPL. That is the real legacy of the IPL. And yes, as the architect, no one can deny Lalit's role, but obviously the institution is far bigger, always bigger than the individual. In this case, the IPL is the institution. The BCCI and Indian cricket is the institution. You asked me what changed on 18th April. Everything changed. Cricket changed forever. You have seen Johnny Bairstow credit the IPL 2 days back in a test match. There is always a debate, has the IPL damaged a test match? No. Today, look at the 50,000 crores. Look at the employability of anyone who plays cricket. WIPL will happen. Look at the number of women who will be employed. The industry, you and me, the business industry, the media,
not just the ecosystem.
The ecosystem, correct. The ecosystem has become a self-sustaining industry thanks to one property. That is why I say world cricket changed. Yesterday, the ICC put out its tender document, right? Obviously, they will also get substantial money. So they will also feed off. So they are complementary. They're not fighting with each other. On 18th April 2008, the sport changed forever. That's why it is always going to be a very significant date.
Korea, you already given the chapters, 2 chapters, titles already. And I'll go on to the next 6 chapters. And my senior colleague, Rohel Amin, will take forward the conversation. But before I do that, let me ask you this question, Boria. You're known to say things as they are. Do you think the IPL is overpriced?
I actually don't, because when I think of it, the total, when Sanjeev, for example, put in that 7,000 crore bid, people thought it was completely over the top. It was an ego bid. Now, when you put it in context of the media rights sale, you think, hey, there's something in that bid, right? Because all of these teams will be valued at $1 billion plus. Each of them will be unicorns in a couple of years. Think about the population of India, and this is something I got to give credit to Uday Shankar for. Once he had explained this to me, he said, look, English is the single biggest instrument of class oppression in India. Unfortunately, we are speaking in English here because that is our language here. But he said, yaar, aap agar Tamil Nadu mein kisi ko jaake Hindi mein bolna chalu kar do, in the rural Bengal, you go and speak in English when he doesn't understand, he or she will feel this man is not taking me seriously. Give him commentary in the language that he understands, Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Bangla, Marathi, whatever you want to call it. We don't, or we haven't yet touched the nook and corners of India. That is why digital. There has to be the next major revolution. In the Indian diaspora, I don't think we have penetrated those enough. So all said and done, over a period of time, and this is for 5 years, and this is why I said not. Think of the 7,000 crore bid, and you thought, hey, Sanjeev Goenka is doing ego here. Now you say 5 years, 50,000 crores for media rights. The next cycle, even if I take a 50% hike, 75,000 crores, all of a sudden Sanjeev Goenka's 7,000 crore starts making money. So clearly the numbers start falling in place. I don't think it is overpriced. What I do think is it will have a spin-off effect on the WIPL. It will have a spin-off effect on other sports as well. Dr. Batra, you have been a successful media baron for several decades. Give me one brand that is pan-India, not even Bollywood. Not even Bollywood. In Bangla, we have rivals. In South India, we have rivals. The only thing that is pan-India, and there are many Indias, you know that. Northeast is a different India, South India, all of us are different, right? The only pan-India brand is the IPL, and maybe food, but the only pan-India brand that exists in our country is this particular tournament.
And Boria, just I think you have to also betting on IPL over the next 5 years at a certain value. You're also betting in India's economy, and exactly. That, in spite of everything, will grow. Forget any negative factor, it'll grow. And also, about 4 months back, I was writing a piece on IPL's rights, and I reached out to Ashish Bhasin, and he said, Anurag, in cricket never loses money. Cricket never loses money for the broadcasters. So a lot of people in the last 1 week have written about the fact that IPL is expensive. People have bid for it because they want to create jobs for themselves, stay in the jobs. But the fact is, in the past, whatever amount was bid for has been recovered, and there's been a profit and there's been a value created. So clearly, I think the people who understand India, who understand the growth story of India, who understand digital, who understand cricket as the way you do, the way Uday does, they know that there is something clearly of value there.
Dr. Batra, when Uday bid 39,000 crores as head of Star, people said this is overpriced. When Star Sports bid 16,347 5 years back, people said it's overpriced. When that mini auction happened, people said it's overpriced. When Sanjeev bid 7,000 and CVC Capital bid 5,600, people said it's overpriced. Clearly, over a period of the last 10 to 14 years, we've heard this overpriced rhetoric all the time. People who are doing that, Walt Disney, Viacom 18 and Reliance, these are some of the world's best companies with the best brains. They will not do ego. If there was no business sense, people are not here for charity. Yes, there is a different passion that sports brings, but there has to be a business consideration as well. That is why people are bidding what they are bidding. So, this rhetoric will play out over a period of time, but we have seen team valuations already, and I remain extremely confident that this is viable. And for once, the BCCI got it right. Nobody said unfairness. Nobody's challenged it. Everything went to plan. They kept it right. So credit to them for creating the multiple buckets. Credit to them for doing it the manner that they did and create maximum value.
Thank you, Boria. So clearly, I'm looking forward to seeing the movie, The Maverick Commissioner. you signed the rights to Boni Kapoor, right?
No, I've signed it to Vishnu Induri and the makers of 83.
Okay, to Vishnu. I saw Boni Kapoor at your book launch, so
Yes, Boniji was also there. He had come over to Kolkata for the launch.
I assumed I should have asked you. So, who is an ideal person in your view? While the professionals will bring in who they, but if you had a kind of a veto on the selection, or you had a role to play in the selection of who would play Modi, who would it be in your view?
This is a tough one because I don't have a say. I mean, it will be the producer who will have the say, or I mean, the film people will have the say. I don't. But it just because you've asked me, and I'm just saying here as a fan or somebody who follows his work and admires. I would think Ayushmann Khurrana will be a very good Lalit Modi.
Good. I was thinking about it, Boria, and I thought Shah Rukh Khan, because one, he's a team owner, and second, he's also flamboyant in his own way. He's down to earth and flamboyant at the same time, and he understands. So I thought Shah Rukh Khan still may be the best person to play him, but Ayushmann Khurrana is pretty good. So clearly good choice. At this point, I'd like to bring in my senior editorial colleague, someone Boria, Ruhail Amin, to take the next set of questions with you. Mr. Amin and Mr. Majumdar, conversation is all yours.
Thank you so much, sir, and thank you, Mr. Majumdar. I mean, since you have answered many questions around the book. So I had one in particular about the 3 years of research. What all went into putting these facts together. Did you pull out the past interviews? Was it tough because you were doing your television also? You started your own company. So how did you manage the backstory of this book?
Yeah, I mean, hundreds of interviews, not some off record, some on record, with almost everybody who was associated with the IPL from the start. Ruhail, you and I have spoken several times. It's not as if I didn't. I mean, you know it all. So yes, hundreds of interviews, practically scarring through every possible published report across any possible genre, whether it is digital or print. I had these huge bound volumes of newspapers, only the sports pages from 2007 onwards, from the first day when this dialogue started. When Modi first mentioned the word IPL to the media, when Yuvraj hit those 6 sixes in South Africa, he was wearing a cap written IPL. That was the first day he gave this presentation. In 2005, he'd done a presentation to the board. So, looking at BCCI working committee minutes, BCCI minutes, looking at media reports, looking at all possible published sources, and of course, every possible person who was connected, interviewing them, talking to them. I've interviewed Lalit several times. So, it was difficult work because obviously you were trying to piece together a story which has elements of controversy, which has not been told, which is the backstage. So I was also apprehensive, but eventually it's come together. But it's upon you, Dr. Batra, and the rest of my readers to judge whether it is convincing enough and whether you like it or not.
So I also want to for our viewers, we are getting these small comments from them, what all transpired, what happened that suddenly Mr. Modi had to all of sudden leave, this league and go. Give us a little bit of, insight into those aspects which people haven't read yet, aren't aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, think about it. I mean, somebody who was generating that volume of money. The IPL was synonymous with Mr. Modi. 2010, the two bids, Sahara 375 million, 1,700 crores. Abhijit was part of the launch. Abhijit was part of the bid on behalf of Sahara India. The Kochi franchise, 333 million. Take the Kochi example. The bids were signed on the 21st. The Sahara bid document was signed by Mr. Modi, I think within 7-8 days, I think around the 28th, 29th of March. But the Kochi document wasn't signed. The first report in the media came around the 7th, 8th of April. Before that, there was silence. So even the media did not know, the investigative media did not know that there was a problem. Everybody thought, because the Kochi franchise owners were giving interviews by by the dozen. In every possible media outlet, if you go and see, you will see the Kochi owners and their photographs coming out, and they were giving interviews. But the story is, they did not get the franchise. Something was going on. Lalit was not willing to sign. Things weren't right. I'm not revealing details because the details are in the book, but I've documented that story piece by piece. Why was he not signing? What was going wrong? What was Lalit's version? Were emails sent? I've accessed emails exchanged between Lalit and the BCCI. So between the BCCI top brass, Lalit writes at 5:32. The board responds at 5:47. Again, Lalit writes at 5:52 p.m. I've chronicled the exact exchange between Mr. Modi and the board. What was going on? How did the relationship between the BCCI and Lalit sour? Why did he have to leave India? Did the board actually ask him to resign? Did they give him an opportunity to resign? Did he not resign? If he did not resign, what was his game plan? Eventually, when he left India, even after leaving India, when he was in England, when the 2013 controversy happened over spot fixing, what was Lalit like? How was he dealing with it? The whole story is backstage. So when you pick up the book, you will read it at one go, because I've tried, as I said, I had access to emails. I had access to correspondence. I had access to interviews as to what transpired, exactly what went on, what time things went on, who were the people involved. So I had access to all of it over a period of time, but the book has gone through multiple legal checks so that we know that we are in the, we are not, and there are no subjective statements here. You cannot just make a subjective statement when you're writing something like this. So keeping all of that, the sensitivity of the issue in mind, I have tried to do a job which I think will appeal to our readers.
Do you think IPL as a property, as an IP, would ever be able to shrug off the fingerprints that Lalit Modi has, strong fingerprints?
No, never. No. I mean, you cannot deny Lalit Modi's imprint on the IPL ever. It will grow. The institution of the IPL will always be bigger than the individual. No debate. The BCCI, the IPL belongs to the board and the Indian cricket fan, like I told Dr. Batra. I think the biggest stakeholder is the Indian fan because he or she consumes it, and that is why the tournament is what it is. The 49,000 crores is because of the fan, right? Because the fan will consume it. They are the ones who will pay top dollar, whether it is on digital or whether it is on TV, whether it is overseas. So it is the fan who make the property. But to deny or to say that the IPL can ever move beyond the Lalit Modi imprint, no. I mean, you can't. I mean, he's the founding father. You can't take it away. If you go and see his Twitter handle, and that's what is quoted in the back of the book. If you go to Modi's Twitter profile and see the display photograph, anyone listening can do that. It has him impeccably dressed, looking up at the heavens. He made the IPL, and in doing so had written his own destiny. The meteoric rise and subsequently an even more meteoric fall. It is that. You cannot deny the man that he created the IPL. No one can. Yes, you can question the way he ran it, but that is the point that I keep asking. Had he not been ad hoc, had he not run or taken calls in the manner that he did, would there have been an IPL? Or the manner that the IPL now exists? We don't know. So when we judge Lalit, we have to judge Lalit keeping these parameters in mind. But to answer the question, the IPL will forever be bigger than Modi because it's the institution, but no one ever, as long as anyone lives, can deny the fact that it was Modi who created the IPL.
Since we're discussing somewhere the media rights also, we had a question around that, so we've seen the closing gap between digital and television. And when I was speaking to some marketeers, honestly, they said that who will spend this much? And because last time, the TV kind of viewership had certain, ups and downs. That is what, brands are saying. Do you think this is how it will pan out?
Yeah, Ruhail, that's a very good question. I mean, if you actually ask yourself, why did television ratings fall in this particular year, at least in the middle? The last 4 games were brilliant. Playoffs at the Eden Gardens, 70,000 people. Final in Ahmedabad, 110,000. Brilliant. Great TV ratings, great viewership. But in the middle, the numbers had fallen to 1 point something. I was also talking to brand leaders and television people. And if I ask myself the question as to why did the numbers fall in the middle? And there is one fundamental reason, Ruhail, and that is what Lalit got right, or the BCCI will get right next year. That is, there was no home and away. A Kolkata Knight Riders fan following a KKR match in Mumbai is never going to be the same. It has to be Eden Gardens. A Chennai Super King fan in Chennai will be always different compared to a Chennai game in Pune. Come on, yeah. A Kolkata Knight Riders, I mean, there was no buzz in Calcutta when KKR was playing because the match was in Pune or Mumbai. It has to be home and away. It is premised on this rivalry. Yes, there will be travel. I mean, think of a Manchester City versus Manchester United match in Ireland. It won't work. It can't work. And you're not saying one game. One game can. Day in, day out, a full tournament in Mumbai without the home and away can never work. So I am assuming with COVID under control, with crowds allowed, with vaccines, with medicines, with therapeutics, BCCI will get this right next year. Lucknow in Lucknow, Ahmedabad in Ahmedabad, Kolkata in Kolkata, Mumbai in Mumbai, Delhi in Delhi. You will see the real brand power of the IPL. And every time, whenever even I ask this question, is this overpriced? The fact is, every day of the IPL, India wins. The World Cup will never be able to match the IPL. And this is a comment I'm making here. Yes, an India-Pakistan can. But what are the other games? England v Australia. Australia v New Zealand. How does it matter to an Indian audience? Once India lost in Dubai to Pakistan, once India lost in Dubai to New Zealand in the World Cup, for all practical purposes, for an Indian cricket fan, the World Cup had ended. Right? For you and me, as journalists, as media people, as academics, as scholars, we will do our work. It was work for us. But the fan who consumes cricket, for him, it had ended. For an IPL game, for 70 days, 60 days, whatever it is, every single night, India wins. You are a Delhi fan, but Delhi is playing CSK. You want an MS Dhoni to play well. So it doesn't matter who wins. India wins. That is the brand power of the IPL, which is why it's the only pan-Indian brand. And that's why people are betting on it.
I have two more questions. One is, we always talk about being one sporting nation, and what has now happened reinforces that, I mean, what happens to other sporting leagues? I mean, will they ever take off? Because it's overshadowing everything else.
I actually don't agree with that, Ruhil, because if you see, and I've got very strong views on this. If you see during the middle of the IPL, India won the Thomas Cup, right? When India won the Thomas Cup, I actually landed in Dubai. And the moment I landed, my phone was flooded with messages, speak to X, speak to Y, talk to people in the team. The next day, curiosity, I just checked the headlines of the Indian newspapers. And if you go and check, I think it was the 15th of May. 16th of May, if you see the papers, you will see IPL was, in some papers at least, relegated to being the second headline, with Thomas Cup being the headline. Now, the way HS Pranoy was celebrated for his win over Rasmus Gemke, the way Lakshya was celebrated, Kidambi Srikanth was celebrated, Satvik and Chirag were celebrated, the way the entire badminton team was celebrated said to me that this is something else. Gopi tells me, and Gopi is I credit him for the badminton revolution in India. He says there were 4,000 courts. There are 4,000 courts in Hyderabad alone, 6,000 in Bengaluru. We are actually talking of a revolution. Sindhu has 19, 20 brands, second to Virat. Look at the way badminton stars are getting money. Look at the way the Prime Minister is involved. The Prime Minister is inaugurating the Chess Olympiad. Neeraj's javelin was auctioned by the PMO. But Neeraj, for example, is one of the biggest brands in the country post-Tokyo. I actually think India is on the cusp of a sporting revolution. Yes, the IPL is way ahead in terms of a brand, but that doesn't mean we can't be a multi-sporting nation.
My final question, 3 reasons why people should read this book.
One, if you're interested in the business of sport, you should. Second, if you're interested in the backstage story as to what really transpired between, in the formation of the IPL and between Modi and the BCCI and what went on, you should read this book. And third, if you're interested in a no-holds-barred account as to what the story of modern India told through the prism of sport is like, you should read this book. Because as I said, I have been as objective. It is not whitewash. It is not a biography of Mr. Modi. It is the story of the IPL exactly the way I know it, and I have been able to piece it together. It's not politically correct. Not intended is not, it is the real story.
it's the real story. I have to ask you one last question, actually, which is, people say there's an overdose of cricket. Do you agree with that?
To a degree, yes, because with COVID, what had happened was a lot of series got cancelled. So if you think, immediately after the IPL, within 7 days, the Indian team was playing South Africa. That series is still on, but even then there is viewership. The test team has already left for England. So we now have two teams, actually, both of which are decent. One is playing white ball, one is playing red ball. There is a lot of women's cricket which will happen or is happening, which I have tremendous interest in and respect for. I think there is huge potential in the women's game, but that's how it is, Ruhail. Why is more and more cricket being played? Because it's being consumed. Had there been no consumption, there would be no production. Clearly, there is viewership. That's why the TV companies or the broadcaster or the digital company is paying money. That is why the property is there, and there is consumption as well. If you take a look at other sports, look at football in England. There is enormous amount of football. Within X number of days last year of the Champions League ending, the Premiership started. The Premiership ended, the other league started, the other competition started. Because of COVID, all of this had come to a standstill. So it is a different world. It is still not a post-COVID world. It is an emerging world out of COVID, or a world that is learning to live with COVID. So it's not an ideal world, never was. It is an unfair world, will always be. If you ask me, should Neeraj Chopra, or for that matter, the Devendra Jhajaria get less money compared to an IPL rookie? Absolutely not. But that's how the market is, right? So when an aspiring tennis player or a Paralympian or a woman or a woman cricketer, or for that matter, anyone makes less money, my first thought is there should be more. But that's how it is. That's how it is. The gender gap will also close over a period of time. But at least sport, and all sport today in India is viable. Bhavinaben Patel made close to 5-6 crores after that Paralympic medal. That's enough money for anybody, right? And if you go and speak to Bhavina, one of my favorites, she will tell you how her life has changed. That is what, and I've got to give credit to the political class. Look at the way the political class, be it the Prime Minister himself, took interest in sport. Look at the way the chief ministers of multiple states, including my own, look at what is happening in Odisha, for example, in Bengal. If you see our sports people, Naveen Patnaik has created tremendous facilities for hockey. Tremendous. I mean, India will host the World Cup in Bhubaneswar. We are less to none. Look at the facilities for badminton in Hyderabad, in Bengaluru. Look at how football will come up in Bengal. Look at the way Yuva Bharati Kridangan was redone. You will know what sport means. Sport is life. Sport is a metaphor for life. It is a kind of religion. So I think India is on the cusp of a revolution. IPL is a different league, but that's okay. Multiple things can coexist and will coexist.
Lovely and great words to end this conversation. And once again, congratulations on your new book. I mean, everyone, I get a lot of messages about where is it available. It's available across the...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we launched it in Bangla and English. So across platforms, all the e-commerce platforms, the Amazon, Flipkarts, etc. Of course, Simon & Schuster India and their web platforms, and all bookstores and leading bookstores. So yeah, it's absolutely available. Kindle editions available for anybody who wants to read it on digital.
Lovely, and we're waiting for the film to get completed soon, and we will definitely look forward to it. But thanks once again for taking our time and joining us on this conversation.
As I said, Dr. Batra is he's an inspiration. I mean, look at the kind of work he's been able to do. I was delighted at getting that Exchange for Media award for Rev Sports for Backstage with Boria. So I've looked up to his corpus of work. It's one of the he's in his own right a leading light in the media domain. So pleasure. And you, Ruhail, I don't need to say it. You're a very, very close friend of mine. I mean, you and I have debated, discussed, disagreed, agreed on multiple things. But the most important thing is mutual respect. I respect you for your work, and that will always be the case. So once you're all invited, it was always a yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for the kind words, and hope to see you in person soon at one of the events.
Pleasure.
Hopefully.
You call me, I'll be there. We'll be traveling for a bit, but whenever you all call me, I'll be there. Thank you very much once again for having me.
Thanks.